My name is Kira Whitman, and I'm 30 years old. I've been working construction for 7 years. Not because I couldn't do anything else. I have an associate's degree, I'm good with numbers, I can hold a conversation with anyone. I chose this work because I'm good at it, I earn honest money, and at the end of every shift, I can point at something real and say I built that. My hands are calloused. My boots are worn down on the left heel. I smell like sawdust and hard work, and I have never once been ashamed of it. Until my mother made me feel like I should be. It was the second week of November when she called. I was driving home from a 12-hour site shift, still in my high-vis vest, windows down because the truck heater runs hot. I picked up expecting the usual, maybe a question about Christmas plans, maybe her asking me to pick something up from the store. Instead, there was a pause on the line. The kind of pause that means whatever comes next has been rehearsed. "Kira, honey," she said, "about Thanksgiving this year." I told her I'd already planned to bring my sweet potato casserole, the one Dad always asks for twice. Another pause. "We're doing something a little different this year. Your brother Theo is bringing someone. A girl. It's serious, apparently, and he wants to make a good impression on her." I said that was wonderful. I meant it. Theo is 26, and for most of his 20s he's been in and out of situationships that lasted 3 weeks and ended in group chat drama. If he'd found someone real, I was genuinely happy for him. The thing is, Mom continued, and her voice dropped like she was delivering a weather report about a storm she couldn't control. "Theo called us last night. He said he doesn't want you there." I went completely still. My truck was still moving, but I felt like I'd stopped. He said your job might make her uncomfortable. That you'd show up in work clothes or talk about construction, or that she'd ask what you do and it would be, his word, awkward. He said your blue-collar job would embarrass him in front of her. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just watched the road and breathed. "We didn't want to upset you," Mom added, filling the silence with something that wasn't quite an apology. "But it's important to Theo that this goes smoothly. You understand, don't you?" And that's when something in me went very quiet. Not the kind of quiet that means you're fine. The kind that means you've just stepped back from a ledge and you're deciding very carefully what to do next. I thought about arguing. I thought about crying. I thought about telling her exactly what I thought of a mother who would pass that message along without pushing back, without defending her own daughter, without saying, "No, Theo, that's not how this works." Instead I said, "I understand," and I meant something entirely different by it than she thought I did. I hung up and sat in my driveway for 20 minutes. My neighbor's kid was drawing chalk shapes on the sidewalk across the street. A yellow sun. A lopsided house. A family of stick figures holding hands. I watched her until the tightness in my chest loosened just enough for me to go inside. That night I didn't call anyone. I didn't text my best friend Leanne or vent to my coworker Dominic, who I knew would have driven straight to Theo's apartment to have words with him. I just sat with it. I let myself feel how much it hurt, the particular, specific humiliation of being told your presence is a liability. That the life you've built with your own hands is something your family needs to hide. What they didn't know, what nobody in my family knew yet, was that 3 weeks earlier I had signed the largest contract of my career. A commercial development project. The kind that gets written up in trade publications. The kind that meant I was no longer just a worker on someone else's site. I was the site supervisor, the one other people answer to. I hadn't told them because I'd wanted to wait until it was fully confirmed in writing. I was going to announce it at Thanksgiving, over sweet potato casserole, with everyone together. But they'd taken that moment from me, so I decided to let them have their dinner. I was curious what 5 days would teach them. Thanksgiving came and went without me. I spent it alone, which sounds sadder than it actually was. Leanne invited me to her place, but I declined. I needed the quiet. I made myself a proper meal, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and yes, the sweet potato casserole, because I wasn't going to let Theo ruin my favorite recipe. I ate at my own table, in my own apartment, that I pay for with money I earned by showing up every single day and doing work that most people wouldn't last a week in. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't expected. Clarifying, almost. What I didn't know was what was happening across town at my parents' house while I was sitting in that peaceful quiet. Theo's girlfriend's name was Sarah Calloway. 24 years old, sharp eyes, quick laugh, That's how Mom would describe her to me later, stumbling over her words, trying to explain everything at once. Sarah had grown up in a family of engineers and contractors. Her father owned a mid-sized civil construction firm in the next state over. Her older sister had just been promoted to project manager on a federal infrastructure contract. Construction wasn't something Sarah found awkward or embarrassing. It was her entire family's world. So when Theo over dinner made some offhand comment about how his family was all white-collar, very career-focused people, Sarah had smiled politely and asked about siblings. Theo said he had one sister. Sarah asked what she did, and Theo, without thinking, said she worked in construction in the same tone you'd use to say someone had a parking violation on their record. Sarah put her fork down. She asked what kind of construction. Theo said he wasn't really sure of the details. Sarah asked if his sister had her own projects or worked under someone. Theo said he assumed she just worked on sites. Sarah asked why his sister wasn't at dinner. And that's when Mom, who had been quiet through all of this, made the mistake of telling the truth, that Theo had asked for me not to be invited because he thought my job would make things uncomfortable. The table went very still. Sarah looked at Theo for a long moment. Not with anger exactly, with something more unsettling than anger, with the clear-eyed, measuring look of someone recalculating everything they thought they knew about a person. She said, quietly and without drama, that she found that deeply strange, that in her family, the people who built things with their hands were the most respected people at any table. That her father started out pouring concrete at 19 and now employed 340 people. She said she would have loved to meet his sister. Theo tried to recover. He laughed and said he just thought it might be awkward given the difference in their worlds. Sarah said she didn't think their worlds were as different as he seemed to think, and she'd like to be the judge of that herself. It didn't end the dinner, but it changed the temperature of the room in a way that never quite recovered. 5 days later, on a Sunday morning, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it to find my mother, my father, and Theo standing on my front step. Mom looked like she hadn't slept. Dad looked like he was there because Mom had made him come. Theo looked like someone who had spent 5 days arguing with himself and finally lost. They came inside. I made coffee because I wasn't raised to leave people standing in a kitchen without offering something hot to drink, even when those people have recently made you feel like an embarrassment to your own bloodline. Mom started talking first. She explained about Sarah, about the dinner, about what Theo had said and how Sarah had responded. She said Theo had something he wanted to tell me. She looked at him. He stared at his coffee cup. I found out about the contract, he said finally. Leanne posted something on her story. Tagged your company. I waited. Kira, you're running a $12 million development project. 14, I said. It went up after the scope revision. The silence that followed was one of the most satisfying moments of my life, and I say that without any guilt at all. Dad cleared his throat and said he was proud of me. I thanked him and noted calmly that it would have been nice to hear that before I was excluded from a family holiday. Mom started crying. I handed her a napkin and let her cry because some things need to be felt fully before they can be resolved. Theo apologized. It wasn't a perfect apology. It had some self-justification woven into it, a little too much explanation of what he'd been thinking. But it was real enough that I accepted it. Not for his sake entirely, for mine. Because carrying that particular kind of hurt is heavy, and I do enough heavy lifting at work. What nobody said out loud, but everyone in that room understood, was this: the thing Theo had been ashamed of was the exact thing that had made Sarah respect me before she'd ever met me. The hard hats, the steel-toed boots, the early mornings and the sight dust and the work that leaves marks on your hands. He tried to hide me and ended up revealing himself instead. Sarah and I met for coffee the following week. She reached out through Theo, which I thought was gracious of her. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about her family's firm, about how her dad still gets emotional walking past buildings he helped construct 30 years ago. I told her about the day I first ran my own crew and how it felt like something finally clicking into place. We exchanged numbers before we left. Real ones, not polite ones. Theo's still with her. They're doing well from what I can tell. And last month, Sarah's father reached out to me professionally. He'd heard about our project through industry channels and wanted to discuss a potential collaboration on a commercial development in the spring. My brother tried to hide me from his table. Instead, he walked me into a room I didn't even know I needed to be in. I'm still in my steel-toed boots. I still smell like sawdust at the end of a long day. And I have never, not for a single moment since, been ashamed of any of it.